get a check.
Check 1 2 3 5 7 92. That was a good year. 92.
It was a great year.
Wait, what year were you born in?
85. Son.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you old.
I'm old. You don't see the grays?
No.
What?
We know that you color dyed your beard.
I don't color dye nothing, bro. Don't be calling me your average Dominican. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. I've been so excited to tell random people Happy Valentine's Day. I always tell people in the elevator, Happy Valentine's Day.
Did they look at you weird?
No, I just feel like it's a good day that, you appreciate love despite your relationship status.
I think it's a fake holiday.
What? I think it's a day to slow down and, like I said, appreciate love.
I like that take on it.
Okay, to try not to roll your eyes too much there.
All right, so just to introduce yourself, tell the listeners a little bit about you, what you do, where you're from, social security number, all that stuff.
Well, I will not tell my social security number, but my name is Madina. I'm a therapist, and I'm from New York, but I moved down to North Carolina in the middle of the pandemic.
In the middle of the pandemic?
Yes. I literally packed my car with whatever would fit, and I just came down here. So
tell me you're a New Yorker without telling me you're a New Yorker.
I will try not to swear on here, but that'll give it away. My first morning here, someone waved at me. I think I told you this story, and I was like,
you didn't. What?
Someone waved at me the first morning I was here, and obviously I didn't know anyone because I just packed up and moved. And I was like, in my head, like, who the fuck is that? Like, so, but anyway, yes, I'm from New York. I came to North Carolina.
If you guys have never been to New York, they don't do that.
We don't wave. But see, my thing is, where you stand with a New Yorker. Like, if they like you or not.
True.
But in the South, everyone acts like they like you. So
that's also true.
Yeah.
It's also something to take note of. What kind of therapy do you practice?
So right now I specialize in anxiety disorders.
Interesting.
Yeah, I have a huge passion for it because it's what I teach a lot of my clients is a lot of what I practice and what I think is just like really good life skills. Because the premise of the type of therapy we do is teaching people how to become comfortable, or I don't even know if I like the word comfortable, but more acclimated to uncertainty and discomfort, which I think all of us can definitely benefit from.
Do you, how long have you been doing it?
7 years now.
7 years.
Not anxiety disorders. Anxiety disorders is like 3 years now, where I've been doing primarily specialty with.
So before anxiety disorders, what were you doing before that? What were you seeing before that?
Just a general therapist, which is my whole gripe with therapy, because I think therapy would be a lot more effective if we had more specialists.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The last guest that was on here, she saw a therapist for, I think she worded it as childhood trauma.
Okay.
So I guess trauma that is directly linked to trauma that you had as a child is exactly what I just said. I'm over here trying to sound smart, y'all. So many questions. The pandemic. Did you notice an increase in clientele? 1. 2, how do you personally think that the pandemic has affected things up to now? So it's been 3 years? 3 years since it started, when it started.
Okay, yeah, that sounds accurate.
So, yeah, what are your thoughts? And I'm asking this because I feel like the pandemic triggered a lot of people. Mm-hmm. A lot of people that didn't even know they had specific traumas. Or didn't know that they were depressed or had anxiety. And I remember going into the hospital because I got COVID, I think, in 2021. And the nurse I was having a conversation with the nurse, almost dying from COVID.
Oh, my God.
And she was telling me that they were seeing a lot of mental health cases in 2021.
Yeah.
But anyways, what are your thoughts or opinions about that?
Well, first off, the therapist in me can't unacknowledge or not acknowledge that you went through that. So I'm sorry that you were in the hospital. I definitely want to hear more about that. But yeah, I think it's hard for me to tell just because I think I've always had a lot of people reaching out for therapy. So I don't know if I would say it's necessarily any higher for me personally. I know a lot of people probably want to hear the answer that, yeah, it's so much higher. I think it's always been
we want the truth.
Yes. I think you'll see that so commonly, like how many people go to the emergency room because they think they're having a heart attack, but it's panic or anxiety. I'm sure, if we were to really like quantify it, that maybe more people are recognizing it. And I think mainly it's because we're forced to slow down. Like I know for myself, even I think I've, maybe acknowledged things going on that maybe were easier to sweep under the rug because I was so go, go, go. And I can still see that I'm trying to be that way, but it's a little bit harder, especially when the pandemic was like in full fledged where we like literally had to slow down. So yeah, I think it's probably opened up a lot of eyes for people when it comes to mental health.
Right.
My gripe though is like, I feel like mental health has become like a big like catchword.
Huge.
And I just like, I get frustrated because most insurances do not cover mental health. And so a lot of people are paying out of pocket. Like even myself, if I want to go to therapy as a therapist, I have to pay for therapy. And so many people don't have access to it, can't afford it. And so I really wish like as a society, I know this is like a huger issue, but we would do better with that. We wouldn't just say that it's important, but we would put in, I guess, like parameters to help people actually get therapy, which would really save people money in the long run because like, again, how many people are going to urgent care or the emergency room because they're having a panic attack?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my little rant on.
No, that happened to me last October. I had what I thought felt like, I don't know if it was a heart attack or stroke or I don't know what the fuck. But I woke up in the middle of the night in a hot sweat, like drenched in sweat. And you know that feeling you get when you get up really fast and you feel dizzy?
Yep.
But then it starts to go away. It didn't go away. That's how I felt, and I wanted to throw up. So I went to the shower, cold shower, started to feel a little better, and then I blanked out in my shower. Scariest thing that's ever happened to me. Because that could have gone so many different ways.
Yeah.
I called people that were close to me. I don't know why I didn't call 911. I just called people that were close to me, like if they were going to be awake at 3 a.m. But that was my first instinct.
Yeah.
Like to call people that were close to me. And I went to, I Ubered myself to the nearest hospital, which wasn't far from where I stay. And long story short, they put IVs on me. They did blood work and all that stuff. And I was there for like 12 hours. And the doctor comes in and he's like, well, you're really healthy. Like, but are you stressed out? And he starts asking me personal questions. Like, how's work? How are your finances? Are you going through relationship problems? Just all these questions that have nothing to do with my physical health.
Yeah.
And the way he described it to me, I'll never forget. He goes, well, I've been seeing a lot of this amongst younger people lately. That's why I asked you about the whole pandemic thing. And he goes, what you're going through is a very, what's the word? Chronic anxiety? I forget how he
Generalized anxiety?
I forgot how he worded it. Basically, he described it to me like this. If you're a very anxious person and you hold it in, it's like taking a small axe to a big oak tree. And every time you feel anxious, you hit that oak tree. So every instance of anxiety is you hitting that oak tree. It's not going to do anything to that oak tree, right?
Yeah.
But if you hit that oak tree for years and years and years, it's going to eventually affect it one way, shape, or form. He said that's exactly how the body is. Every time you get stressed out, every time you get anxious, it literally chips away at your system.
Yeah.
Until your body just can't take it anymore. And that's exactly what happened to you. It was scary, man, because
Yeah.
they started talking to me about like where this could lead. Like I had no idea that anxiety could lead to a possible stroke
Yeah.
or a heart attack.
Yeah.
And they were like, that is where you're headed if you don't
Mm.
do something about it. So yeah, that uh, that happened to me last year. Not that you asked, but you brought that up.
Well, no, I'm glad that you brought that up because I think I can definitely resonate with this, and I think it's important for people to hear, even coming from a therapist, that this stuff happens to everyone. I think normalizing it's really important. But I experienced a very similar thing this past like couple months. Has been like honestly really rough for me, and I had a period where, because it sounds like you had a panic attack, and
There you go. That's what I had. Panic
yeah,
attack.
yeah.
There you
And
go.
for anyone who doesn't know, panic attack is pretty different than generalized anxiety. It's heightened within just a couple of minutes. The person literally feels like they're dying. There's often, you're profusely sweating, heart rate. You feel like you're going to faint, which is
Yeah.
kind of what you described. And I had one of those, which like I joke a little bit. Like I sat down on my bed. I felt like I was going to faint. I was profusely sweating. There was Kendrick Lamar playing in the background, and I was like, I'm dying. And I literally
Had to be
almost,
Kendrick Lamar.
I know.
At least it wasn't Drake.
I know. But I literally also almost called 911. But, being a therapist, I knew what was happening, but it was an eye-opening experience because I don't have a history of panic attacks. In fact, I've never had one. I've diagnosed panic disorder hundreds of times. So it was a very new experience for me. And it was kind of, I think what happened was that wood chopping analogy you put was I was pushing down so many things and really unaware of it. Like even after the panic attack, I was like, I don't understand why I would have that. I'm not that anxious. And I'm like, Madina, like obviously you were suppressing it so much that it came out in your body. And that's really what a panic attack or anxiety is your mind can no longer like quote unquote trick you into thinking that you're okay. And your body is literally rebelling against you. And kind of what you're describing is probably really common for a lot of people. It's just emotional inhibition, right?
Yeah.
You're not expressing your emotions, and then they eventually spill over.
Here we go. Here's my therapy session.
Yeah. Wait, I need some. That's why I came here. You were supposed to give me therapy.
I don't express shit.
Yeah, you and every other guy. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Hang on. I have a very, very, very few select people that I do express my things to. But again, it's a very few select. Most of my friends are other entrepreneurs, business owners, or they got a family. Like sometimes I think like the last thing they want to hear are my issues. So I don't. I'm a very. It takes a lot for me to one, express myself and to just let it out. So I probably need some therapy.
Yeah.
But it just what you said there really makes a lot of sense. Because at that point when I sat in the hospital or laid in the hospital for 12 hours, you start thinking about like, why am I here?
Yeah.
And I started thinking about just everything.
Yeah.
How much work I was taking on.
Yeah.
Things going on in my personal life that I wasn't expressing to anyone. I was taking all of that on by myself. Recently I started delegating things within my business. I was
Asking for help. What?
Exactly. That was probably my biggest downfall. I didn't ask for any help. But now I look back on it. Also, exercise. Like I can go on and on. But looking back at it, I start to wonder like how many other people go through the same thing.
Yeah.
Especially now that like entrepreneurship is so glorified. People don't really talk about the shit that comes with entrepreneurship, where you're fucking working 7 days a week.
Yep.
Sometimes 12 to 16-hour days. Sometimes you don't get a chance to work on your physical and mental health. So yeah, it made me think. But going back to what you do, what do you mostly see? Like, what are your more common cases that you take on?
Well, right now I specialize in OCD predominantly. I do see like some generalized anxiety disorder, more like adjustment, say like divorce or something like that. But yeah, and it's interesting because OCD I think is really misunderstood. Like a lot of people throw that term out. Like even sometimes I don't even want to tell people I treat OCD because they're like, I'm a little OCD or like I have OCD.
Yeah, you know, now that you say it, I don't know what OCD means.
Yeah.
Because people throw it around. So what does that mean? What's the proper term? What's the proper definition of it?
Yeah. So someone with OCD has what we call obsession. So they're known as intrusive thoughts, images, urges. Intrusive means unwanted. And that's not really the predicting factor of having OCD because we all have intrusive thoughts. So most of us can identify like driving over a bridge and maybe having the thought like, what if I just drove my car off this bridge?
Oh, damn. It's
Yeah.
dark.
Yeah. They're intense thoughts, right? But it's really just the mind's creativity, which we all have. So we all have intrusive thoughts, but the person with OCD will do what we call compulsions. So they're behaviors that are done to either reduce a person's stress or to help them feel like they're preventing a fear from happening. And that's what makes it clinical. So the person without OCD has the thought and they're just kind of like, oh, that was weird. The person with OCD might do checking rituals, cleaning. They might do a lot of ruminating. So basically a lot of what we do is we re-expose them behaviorally to the thing they're scared of. So if someone said they were scared of driving in my session, I would literally have them get in the car and drive with me yeah, it's really interesting because you get to actually see people get better literally right in front of your eyes because you're having them do the scary thing over and over again. And I think that that's just a really important lesson for everyone, OCD or not, because we all do avoidance, we all ruminate, we all ask for reassurance, all these things that actually increase our fear versus letting us live our life. Because a lot of times we're acting out of fear.
Absolutely. What got you into doing this?
I kind of jokingly say this fell into my lap because after I graduated undergrad, I went to yoga school for a year and I just taught yoga. I lived off love and peace and it was amazing. And then I went back to grad school for mental health. And then the company I work for right now actually found me on, I also have a small private practice. So they found me through the advertisement I had for that practice. And at the time I was actually reading a book called Comfortable with Uncertainty. And it talked a lot about basically what I teach people, right, is to stop trying to get rid of discomfort or to figure out why it's happening, but more so to live with the fact that that's just the human condition, is that we go through difficult times.
Right.
And so when I heard what this company had to say, I literally can't picture myself doing any other form of therapy because I just subscribe to it so much personally. And it's very similar to, because I'm very into working out and yoga, and I think I love it so much because it's a microcosm of the real world. Like, how do you respond when things get difficult? And it doesn't always mean that you're pushing, right? And I think this is the lesson I'm learning for myself is how do you slow down? But I think a lot of it's not necessarily our thoughts, our feelings, or the things that happen to us, but it's the way we react to them.
Here's a question that I've always wanted to ask a therapist.
Uh-oh. No pressure.
You take on so many other people's problems, issues.
Yeah.
So how do you cope with that? Because, to put an example, you're in a relationship with someone and you take on their problems and their issues and on top of yours.
Yeah.
That can be taxing in the long run. So how many people do you talk to on a weekly basis? Roughly.
Well, it's a little different right now just because I'm managing a lot of therapists. So I say I'm a therapist of therapists. And then I probably do 10 client hours.
Okay. So with that being said, you have 10 different personalities, 10 different sets of problems.
Yes.
How do you manage your own mental health with all that?
Yeah. I would love to be idealistic here and say I'm very good at going to my own therapist and talking about my own. And it is. It's blah, blah, blah. And I'm so glad you're asking this question because I think it's important for people to hear, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Being a therapist is really hard. I think it's part of why I have been going through these last couple months feeling like it's been really challenging, probably why I had partially had a panic attack, is it's a lot of suppressing your own emotions because you're holding space for other people all day. And then at the end of the day,
Wow.
the last thing you want to do is, hold space for yourself. And so like, I even catch myself shying away from, whether it be romantic relationships, friendships, even my like family relationships, if I think it's going to involve an emotional talk, I like to avoid it. And I don't want to necessarily admit it, but I would be lying if I didn't. And I also want to normalize it, right? It's the human condition to want to avoid uncomfortable things. So I've been trying really hard, maybe the last couple weeks, let's keep it going, to purposefully slow down and allow myself to feel things. Have you seen the Stutz documentary?
No.
Have you heard of it?
I have, though.
Okay. Yeah. So anyone who doesn't know, it's Jonah Hill made a documentary on his therapist, and I wanted to watch it one morning, and I consciously but unconsciously was like, oh, I don't want to feel like emotions. I'm going to watch some like surface level TV. And then I was like, no, let me actually watch this and allow myself to have feelings. And at one point I got emotional, and I normally would have held it back, but I let myself, be emotional. So I think it's a journey, it's a process. So to long answer your question, I'm trying to slow down, set boundaries, say no, and then allow myself to have the feelings. Because, yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. And I would be lying if I didn't say that.
Yeah, I've always wondered that. Like, because I've talked to a couple of therapists myself, and I'm like, damn, I hope I didn't fuck up my therapist when I fuck up shit.
Yeah.
Like, and it just, so like, especially after the pandemic, all you see is like advertisements for all these like mental health agencies or whatever,
yeah,
and, therapies for everybody and blah blah blah. But like I sometimes think like are those therapists getting some specialized therapy? What are they doing? Because that's gotta be rough. Do you feel like physical activity helps a lot? Because you're into yoga and working out and all that shit. So does that help?
Yeah, I think my situation's a little unique because I think I used it a little too much. So actually, speaking of being in the hospital, I was in the hospital over the summer for a week. Have you heard of rhabdo?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, did I tell you this? No.
You didn't.
Okay.
But tell people, because some people might know that rhabdo is.
Yeah, I think rhabdo should be definitely more publicized because I didn't even know what it was, and I had worked out my whole life. But basically, if you go through too intensive a workout, I think it's like the proteins in your muscles break down and go into your bloodstream. And you can die pretty quickly from it, which is the scary part. I live here alone in Charlotte, and I remember distinctly, it was like maybe my third day after the workout, my arms were so swollen I couldn't even use them. There was, for reference, 12 pounds of swelling in my arms. Yeah, roughly 12 pounds.
Slow down on the roids, bro.
It was too many pull-ups. But
deadlifting 315.
oh my God, no. But yeah, I called urgent care in the middle of the night because it said it was 24 hours. I'm like, there's no way they're open. So I called and he answered. He's like, what are you coming in for? I'm like, my arms are swollen. He's like, that's an emergency. Go to the ER right now. And I'm like, no, it's just from a workout. He's like, no, go to the ER right now. So like at that moment, like I don't like to use the word traumatized lightly because I feel like a lot of people throw around that word as well, along with OCD. But for all intensive purposes, my life was threatened, right? I could have died in a matter of days, right? So I'm like rushing to the hospital, driving with my arms really straight. The doctor's like, how did you drive here? But they like took me back immediately. And I don't want to bore you guys with the details of this story, but it was a sign. I think it was the first sign in the last 6-7 months that my body was like, slow down, and I didn't listen.
Do you think you were using physical activity?
Totally. I already know what you're going to say. Yes. Yeah. An unhealthy coping mechanism for sure. And that's what I mean when I say, how you respond is important. It's not always about like pushing yourself. Cause that's how I always kind of interpret it. It's like, I want to push through this. Like I did bodybuilding for years, like an athlete my whole life. And it's been humbling to, slow down. Like I went to run club the other day and I was talking to my friend. I'm like, oh, should I run or walk? And he's like, you should definitely run. And I was like, what if I told you walking is the harder option for me? And he's like, oh.
And they say running is actually better. They say walking is actually better for you.
Probably long term, right? And I think, so I say all that to say that yes, I use working out as a coping mechanism, but I need to find more of a balance of it, not being so extreme. Because my body's told me in multiple ways to slow down, and I'm not the best at listening.
Well, it's probably, so I had to deal with this too. The mentality that a lot of us have when we are in a certain position. For myself, what I do, I have to really analyze what I went through last year. So last year I went through a lot of bullshit and ended up in the hospital, and I'm learning from that. But what I didn't realize was I was putting myself up on a pedestal. I was acting like I was Superman or some shit. And I think being a physical therapist, you kind of maybe put that in your head, like, I have to be there for those people.
Yeah.
So I have to do whatever it takes to be there for those people. But hey, man, you're only fucking human. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I think, like, there's been literally, and I don't want to share this, but I'm working on being more vulnerable. There's literally been times where I'm either crying or like about to cry, and I literally have to just cut myself off because I have to like go into a session. And then I have to be like, obviously I can't, it's not like I'm going into a regular work meeting where it's like a bunch of my colleagues. Like, I have to show up for that person, right?
Yeah. In a way, it makes you stronger, but it also deteriorates you at the same time.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go into too much detail, but I learned that in a relationship that I had, where I was trying very hard to be there for that specific person, and didn't realize what it was doing to myself. Like, I am not a therapist, but sometimes you do things out of compassion or passion or love, and don't realize the effect that it can have.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you're extremely passionate about being a therapist, so you're not gonna think about the consequences of what it's doing. How old are you?
I'm supposed to say that out loud. I'm
Yes.
30. I know. I look like I'm
Like
22.
you're 24, right? I said 24.
So did I tell you the other day someone was like, "You're 30?" Like, I'm like, "Dang, you don't have to make that sound so old."
But like, I'm 37.
Yeah.
What you're doing right now is gonna have a huge effect on when you're my age. And I know it's only 7 years, but I can't preach that enough, man. Like, what you're doing right now, what you're eating, how much you're sleeping or not.
Oh, don't even talk to me about sleep. I love sleep. I literally could talk about it for a whole hour.
I'm working on it. I really do believe that it's something that you, like, when you're younger and you hear it from your parents or like the older people in the crowd, like, hey, whatever, don't eat that, you're gonna regret it when you're 50. Man, that shit's true, yo.
Yeah.
That shit is so true.
Yeah.
10 years ago, I could have eaten Domino's and McDonald's and Wendy's in one day. Would have been fine. Would have been shredded. I eat one burger right now and my fucking ass jiggles for a week. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I think, and you seem like a smart girl. I think, sometimes. I think what you do is beautiful. Recent life experiences have really made me look at mental health in a completely different way.
Yeah.
Because people don't understand or realize how that can affect someone if they don't experience it for themselves. But also, like, me being an entrepreneur, business owner, whatever the fuck you want to call me, self-care, I know that term gets thrown around a lot, but having the proper self-care is super important for longevity, because something I had to realize, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's literally how long you can keep it going.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, and I don't know if this is completely on topic, but even like back to the Stutz documentary, I mean, we're talking a lot about like what it's like to be a therapist. I think it is important to bring light to like therapy in general. And
Like, do you see a therapist?
I don't.
You don't?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And this is how I know. And again, I'm trying to just be very transparent on here, even though they might not be the popular things. But I've like literally thought to myself, what's the point? And I think
seeing a therapist, what's the point?
Yeah, but you know, if you really slow down, that's a thought someone who's a little bit more depressed would say, right? What's the point?
Right.
Not saying I'm like clinically depressed per se, but I think it was a moment where I realized there was a lot of emotional inhibition, which can cause you to feel down, right? Or kind of that flat affect where you're not really like feeling the normal range of emotions of like sometimes you feel good and sometimes you feel bad, and it's more of just like a flat line. But I think I was going to say something about the Stutz documentary, but now I would probably write in my notes circumstantial speech.
Well, I think how do I word
now I got us both off topic. That's what I do as a therapist.
I think it's really interesting that you don't see it. Why do you not see a therapist? Because if I did what you did,
yeah,
I would be talking to somebody on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But, you know, obviously we're different. But what's your reason for not seeing one?
I think it's a combination of two things. The first thing is I don't know that there's a lot of merit to sitting and talking about things that's happened to me. And I don't say just me, just in general. I think a lot of therapy winds up being rumination of like speculation of like, why do you think you are that way? Or like, what happened to you when you were a kid, which I think is valid and important to a certain degree, but then it just becomes circles at that point. I think
that's the biggest complaint of therapists, like from people that have seen
yeah.
therapists. But I also think it's about finding the right one.
Yes. Yeah. So I think there's that, because I don't want to go and necessarily talk. I want to do. And that's why I like the therapy I do is I don't talk a ton about people's past. I more so teach them how to respond and relate differently to what's going on. And then also to accept who they are. I think there's a lot of over pathologizing going on of like, for example, like I would say I'm a pretty rigid person, and I think there's times where I should definitely practice like not being so rigid, but at the end of the day, that's my personality, and I can either choose to accept it or spend the rest of my life trying to change it. Yeah. And I just don't think, so I think therapy winds up being that a lot of times. So that's the first reason. And then again, if I'm being honest and transparent, the second reason is I'm probably avoiding it. I don't want to talk about my own shit. And I like catching myself very frequently.
Sound like me.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just the human condition is where a lot of us are avoiding our shit. And am I allowed to swear on here? I can swear on here, right?
Of course.
Okay. But I think those are basically, to answer your question, the two main reasons.
And just changing the subject. So modeling.
Yeah.
Is that something new? Is that something you used to do that
Yeah.
you just picked up again, or is it just like what's the new what's the
411 or whatever? Yeah, so I used to model a lot when I was younger, and then I kind of got away from it. I was like, that's not a real job, and then the joke's on me because that's definitely a real job. So, and I don't regret my path that I chose, but I stopped and I went back to school, and I've been a therapist, obviously, and so now I'm getting back into it. I think it's an interesting journey because I think I have a lot of judgment towards myself. Wow, I'm being really vulnerable on here, but
that's the point of the podcast.
Yeah, shit.
Do you find that modeling is your passion?
Yeah, I think
because I noticed you said something. You said therapy fell on my lap. And I'm sure you're good at it if you've done it for 7 years and you manage other people and you talk to 10 people a week or something like that. So I'm sure you're extremely good at it. But do you think modeling is like more what you're passionate about? That's actually a really good catch.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel, again, hesitant to say this, but we're being honest. Like, yeah, I don't think I'm meant to do therapy for the rest of my life. And I may, regret saying that on this, but I want to be honest. I think I'm doing it for a reason, for whatever reason, I don't know. I'm sure I've impacted people, but yeah, like if I'm being honest with myself, I can have, and this is going to sound really bold, but I can literally have someone tell me that I changed their life and I'm so happy for them, but it doesn't do anything for me. And like, I like hate saying that out loud, but I want to be honest. And I know I'm not the only therapist that feels that way. And I think that's what we call compassion fatigue. And I hate that, like, I can hear a sad story and it might not faze me the same way.
Well, you probably hear that all the time. So myself, just an example.
Yeah.
5 years ago when somebody would say, oh man, you took the dopest photo of blah, blah, or your video was so dope, blah, blah, blah. That would hype me the fuck up.
Yeah.
Now it's like, all right.
Yeah.
And now, and hey, I'll jump on the boat with you. I don't even know if I'm going to do what I do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And it's something that I am super passionate about. But at the same time, you can call it burnout. You can call it whatever the fuck you want. At the same time, like, there's so many other things that you can go out and experience in life that chasing after just one thing, it would be foolish. It's a waste. It's a waste of your life. You get one chance at this shit called life, right? I'm really good at what I do, and I'm not tooting my own horn. I get to pay my bills with this. I'm building a team.
Right.
I'm building a production company, all that bullshit. So that confirms that I'm good at what I do. That doesn't mean that that's all I want to do for the rest of my life.
Right.
So maybe, I wouldn't say you're going to regret saying that. You're just being honest with yourself, and something that a lot of people have trouble doing.
Right. Yeah, I think when I say it, I like, in a way, I'm like trying to protect, like, if any of my clients were listening to this, because I obviously, love and appreciate the work that I do with them. But I also think it's important for other therapists to hear, because I know other therapists feel this way, but they're like myself, we're scared to say it. Right. And I think that's important. And I also think, like, to your point, we get this one life. And I think when I decided to get back into modeling, I think that was kind of the stance I was coming from, was like, it's okay if I don't find, I guess, let me put it this way. When you tell people you're a therapist, a lot of times what they tell you is that must be so fulfilling. And there's nothing more unfulfilling to hear that, right? And to know that that's not, like, I don't feel like at the end of the day, I'm not like, oh my God, I helped so many people. I just don't feel that way. I want to feel that way, but I don't. Right. And I think it doesn't allow space for myself. It doesn't allow space for my loved ones, my friends, my family. And so I think just, like, coming to grips that, I'm very well will likely change my career at some point in the near future is daunting, especially as, I'm not as old as you, but as a 30-year-old, like, it's a little daunting. And it's like this thing that I've been told I'm so good at. And, like, I'm a director at the age of 30, and here's what I think. I think you're obviously good at what you do. I paid him to say that, you guys.
She did. $100. I think you're good at what you do if you're in the position that you're in. Maybe you can just start exploring other things.
Yeah.
Because in my position, the creative work doesn't necessarily pay very well.
Yeah.
Especially where we live.
Right.
In Charlotte, North Carolina. If you want to do something creative, usually there isn't that big of a budget. What does pay, though, is commercial work.
Yep.
But commercial work is not necessarily fulfilling. I like commercial work because I get to give my clients something that they're proud of. I get to give them content that is showcasing their product, their business, whatever, and they love that, and that does fulfill me. But it fulfills me in a different way.
Right.
The creative stuff is what really fulfills me, but it doesn't pay. It doesn't pay the bills. So I had to really look at myself after talking to a mentor that I have. I had to really look at myself and my business and say, what do I care about more? Do I just say, fuck it, I'll live off a whim and get paid whatever I get paid and keep hustling?
Yeah.
Or do I put the creative stuff aside and really build an actual business so I can financially, so I can have financial freedom to do the creative stuff? And that's what I did. And it was really hard because commercial work doesn't really fulfill me, but it pays the bills. It grows the business. I get to give other people opportunities as well. So maybe I think, here's a thought. Maybe I think you can do the same.
Yeah.
Where you're very good at being a therapist, right? It's paying your bills, right? Is that your only source of income right now? Okay.
Yeah.
So
I mean, some of the modeling stuff is paid right now, but not enough yet. So if anyone needs a model, let me know.
I think you should stay in that lane, but also work on the creative.
Sir, I've already been doing that.
Well, you're talking like you are, I'm not going to do this forever, blah, blah, blah. Maybe you are.
Well, when I say not do it forever, like my goal is I think part of why I'm burnt out, right? Let's just call it what it is it's just too many hours, right? I think obviously yes, it fell into my lap to a certain degree, but I've stayed with it for a reason. So it does fulfill me. I think it just is too many. So ideally, and I keep saying this, within a year, I would like to do more contract work. So maybe 10, 15 hours. And then the rest of it's the, modeling or content creation.
Yeah. I think there's so many different avenues you could take to.
Yeah.
You can start your own podcast about therapy. You can jump on YouTube, and there's so many avenues to sell what you're good at right now. And in the age that we're living in a beautiful. We're living in a not a beautiful age.
You can say beautiful. There's good and bad no matter what.
Right. Where we live, in the country that we live in, in the situation that we're in, we have a lot of great opportunities. I think you can maybe, go that route. Research that route for yourself.
Yeah.
Because you saying that you don't find fulfillment, I don't truly believe that. Maybe you're just so, like you say, burnt out from it, that you're kind of like, I want something new. We get bored very easily.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because even hearing you talk and so many other people I've talked to about this, I'm not naive to the fact that, say I did, for example, model full time. There's going to be days, I did 6 or 7 shoots in the last week, and there were definitely moments where I was I don't feel like going, right? And I'm obviously not doing it full time. There's going to be days where you don't want to do it, right? And then, yes, boredom, right? Even when I taught yoga for a year, there was a point where I was I can't do this anymore. It's just so, the same every day.
I think that you can explore different avenues.
Yeah.
And you can,
because you get bored, right?
Right. Yeah. You get burnt out. So there was a point where I was just doing portrait photography.
Oh gosh.
And I was just doing boudoir. And I was just doing nightlife videos. Holy fucking shit. All right, picture this.
Yeah.
Going to the club.
Yeah.
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. For 4 years. Filming at the same venues, taking the same pictures, seeing the same people over and over and over again. Yeah, I was good at it, but holy shit, I don't even want to do it anymore. No matter how much money they were offering, they would offer me, which they don't offer that much. But it's just sometimes you just get burnt out from it. Even if it's something within your industry, you got to try something else.
Yeah.
So I quit doing that and started venturing out to commercial work. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is different. It's allowing me to explore my creativity in a different manner. It's allowing me to make a little bit more money. and it's allowing me to still grow my portfolio.
Yeah.
And I'm still learning within my craft. And fast forward to now, I miss the nightlife stuff. The nightlife stuff really, it's not as easy as people think, to make it interesting. The challenging part is going to the same venue every weekend and making it look different every weekend, making it look hype every weekend. You have to be a very creative person to do that. So I would say, maybe you look into something like that yourself. I mean, I like to ask all of my guests on here, at the end of each episode, if there was a piece of advice that you could give someone, somebody that maybe wants to chase after their goals and dreams, somebody who is maybe going through some shit, just life in general. I know there's so much advice you could give to people, but if there was one thing,
oh my God,
one thing that you could think of, to anybody that's listening, it could be to the female crowd, it could be to anybody, what would it be?
Oh gosh, no pressure.
You can take your time.
Can I say two things?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so the first thing that comes to my mind is nothing lasts for forever. And then stop thinking, start doing. I think we get sucked into thinking about a lot of things. And this can be as simple as like, how do I get myself to go to the gym? And it's like, less thinking, more doing. And then I say nothing lasts for forever because a lot of times when we're stuck in an uncomfortable emotion, we forget that it'll go away at some point, and we try to do something to fix it or to change it. And a lot of times we fuck it up even more. Versus if we just let it be, it would have persisted so long. So yeah, nothing lasts for forever.
Cool. I love it.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to book you for a therapy session,
after everything I said, no one's gonna want to fuck me. No,
I think differently, because you are showcasing that therapists are also people.
Yeah.
And you said some very interesting things that most of us don't really think about.
Yeah.
And you also, even though you said everything that you said, you're still doing what you do, and you're still good at what you do.
Yeah.
So no, I think somebody listening to this, it'd be foolish not to ask for your help.
Well, I mean, I do want to definitely be clear, if I were ever in a space, because it's actually in our ethical codes that if we're not in a mental space to give therapy, that we are to not do it. So obviously I'm not at that point. And again, I wanted to bring insight to people who go to therapy, but also for other therapists, because again, I know that other people feel this way, but a lot of people aren't talking about it. But yes, if you would like to find out more information with therapy, I also do some group therapy. Should I just give my Instagram handle?
Yeah,
I have
absolutely. Do you do therapy for other therapists as well?
I have seen therapists before. Yeah.
That's something that you would take on?
Yeah.
I think that sounds like something you would be good at.
Yeah. So that's interesting that you say that, because I have this group that I started, that's a virtual group, and I'm thinking about starting it to be a therapist focused group.
Don't think, just do.
Oh, who gave you that good advice? But yeah, my mental health page is mentalhealth_Madina_. And then you can also find me on Psychology Today. And yeah, maybe I'll give you like my email or something.
Cool.
It's kind of long to spell.
I will plug all her stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
I feel like this conversation was too short.
I know it went by fast.
But I'll definitely have you back on here for a little update.
Yeah.
Thank you to Bokao Sushi for having us here today. Have you been here before?
No, but I need to come back.
Bro, it's lit.
Never been.
Food is good.
Yo, I will totally fuck up 3 sushi rolls. Like,
yeah, it's really good. Thank you to Bokao Sushi for hosting the podcast again. And thank you to Madina for
Thank you.
coming onto the podcast. I have shot with Madina, by the way, and she's fantastic. Very unique shooting experience.
That's his nice way of saying that I'm really obnoxious and annoying.
She was awesome to shoot with.
Thanks.
She's good at what she does, so definitely hit her up. And thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Peace out.
Peace.